Hey legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. We've got a big episode today. We talk about the big winners. Yes, Brisbane is back, baby. Brizzy's back. Yes. And then we talk about the big losers. How about Melbourne? Whether or not they had a tough game or North Melbourne's just that good. And then we also get into a bit of what's happened in the bye week, what everyone's been up to, what I've been up to in Bali. And then we talk about clangers. There's a few good ones in this episode. So listen in. It's going to be an epic one. We're going to start it right now. All right, legends, it's been a bit of a break. Apologies, I will take full ownership of that. I've had a bit of a Bali holiday and a concussion and a few other things. It's been a bit of a mixed bag, but we're going to get straight into this one. There's a lot to cover, so without further ado, Brayden, welcome to the pod.
Well, I don't want to ruin the podcast off the top, but I'm glad that you're back to, I guess, review one of the most boring weeks in football history. Let's have a few blowouts. Oh, my God. Geez. I don't know what the hell that was.
It was a bye week.
But let's get into it because we have some 50, 100-point blowouts to review. But I want to give my clanger of the week. We'll jump straight into that. Focus on the negatives here on this podcast.
That's lovely. Jeez, Brayden. Okay, straight up top.
That's what we like to do. Just bring it all back down to negatives. And I want to give it... Maybe someone can tell me who I'm giving this to because I reckon there was no winners in my clanger. There's a bit of umpire, a bit of player. We'll put it out there. So Stephen May, he's been fined for staging. Quote unquote? Yeah, he got fined for staging, which is a real kick in the balls when you when you're getting fined for that. You could have bought a 75-incher for what he got fined, but. I'll talk you through it if you did miss it over in there in the Bali, didn't get reception, but he got tackled by Eddie Ford. So let's have a quick guess at the scales. I'd say Stephen May is weighing in at probably about 100, 110, yep. Big fella. And Eddie Ford, he with sideburns, I reckon he'd be 60 kilos, but without him, he's probably 55-odd kilos, wringing wet. He tackles Stephen May. Now, I don't know what he's expected to do because it was reminiscent of Chuka days going to the old rodeos and seeing the little fella up there on the big bull. He's riding as he's bucking and bumping him off. He does a 360, 720. I thought that's a free kick.
Yeah.
1080.
Yeah.
No whistle. What are we doing?
Yeah, okay.
Did
the rules change again while it's gone?
Are they on smoker? Because I didn't know what the hell was going on. He's still on his back for a 1080, takes him to ground because what else is he going to do? His feet aren't on the ground, so he can't. He's not really in control of what the hell's going on. He goes
hold the ball, right?
Wait on. We're still about 20 seconds away from an umpire decision.
Yeah.
They both land on the ground. Replay shows that Stephen May's head does not hit the ground here. But he starts holding his head like he's concussed, that's disingenuous. So I won't blame him, though, because when the whole rule is set up for players to take advantage of it, who are we going to blame here? Are we blaming the system or are we blaming the players? Don't hate the player. Hate the game, they say. Now, they're laying on the ground. Long enough spooning that I start to think they're a couple.
Yeah.
But we're waiting on this whistle. Whistle comes. Everyone's like, oh, there is an umpire today.
Yeah.
Turn around. He's like, I'll give that dangerous tackle. And they're like, oh, sick, mate. Thanks. It wouldn't have been dangerous if you had blown the bloody whistle 2 spins ago. But here we are. And, it's not you figure the dangerous tackler would have got the sanction, but no. Eddie Ford, he's an innocent bystander in all of this, and Stephen May gets sanctioned for faking the head injury, which we don't want because I get the part where we don't want players to get head injuries, so we don't want them faking that they do have head injuries. So Stephen May, don't be doing that. But everyone involved in that, I'm giving them the clanger.
just a full spiel the whole thing. You've come hot. Firing, shots fired from the beginning of this podcast.
Well, when your life is shit, Mace, you just want to sit down and watch some games of footy over the weekend and get a little bit of bloody joy in your life.
Well, I can see.
And I have to watch that shit. Look at that. 138 to 75, 73 to 152.
Yeah, we're going to get into the rest of the games, Brayden, but that is interesting.
It was the closest one from the week.
Look, if I'm Stephen May, like, as a player, right, you're trying to save as much money. The AFL kind of screws you over on these things pretty quickly, and that's just part of the process, right?
You taking that? You challenge it?
But this is the thing. Like, Steve can just be like, oh, like I twinged a nerve in my back or above my neck, There's a million excuses you could go with, I feel like, that the AFL can't really provide any real reason as to them being like, oh, well, if that's the case, then we're still going to find you. Like, that doesn't exist.
You're not in his body. And I would just go, I did a 1080. I was dizzy, so I was holding my head trying to get focus. That's an easy out.
If I'm Stephen May, I take that to the tribunal.
That's an easy out.
I mean, you could think of a million excuses to get through that one.
That's an easy out.
All right, we're going to my clanger of the week. Now, GWS is a famous goal kicker, you could say, named Jesse Hogan, who does a lot of the goal kicking. Yes. Now, he gets a bit of a free kick, and he's having to take the shot from essentially the boundary, right? And that's what everyone practices. Whenever you go out there, you want to get the nice, silky, smooth, skillful around the corner rather than practicing the 90% chances of you getting a set shot in front, right? Who cares about that? Practice how you play. You practice the 1%ers. And this is one of those times that 1%er does come in handy because he's on the boundary and the umpire is looking at him and he's, as you do, you kind of try to gain a meter or two, get a bit of the angle. And the umpire keeps telling him to essentially move to the parking lot to try to figure out how to banana this one from outside the stadium, back around, somehow get some wind, 360, kick the ball, and then come back on it. And he literally at one point tells him behind the post. So he's essentially telling him to kick it from outside of the field of play.
I don't get it. I don't understand what's happening in footy. I don't get
how that's physically possible that he tells him to essentially move into the stands to try to kick the ball.
Yeah.
But it was a classic just comedy of errors. And then the next thing you know is he gets nowhere near the goals. Yeah. He actually just hits the belly of the ball. It goes across the face of the goals. And they end up marking it too.
Yeah.
So it actually kind of maybe worked out for a better angle at goal after this whole debacle and spiel. But the clanger I'm going to go with is, well, one, the kick. And he was probably so frustrated with how the umpire made him kick from behind the goals that he just was like, stuff this, whatever. And then two is going to be the clanger for the umpire, just trying to tell him to essentially kick it from the stance at this point because it was not even a feasible kick that you could actually make.
Yeah, because Jesse almost tries to take the piss by like taking 2 meters over the boundary going like, you want me to kick it from here? And he's like, yeah, that's the spot.
Actually, just there. Stay there. That's it.
When he said behind the post, how's that the line? Because he's like, oh, you got to be on the line. The line's behind the post. I don't get it. I don't understand
sometimes, the mic of the umpire just shouldn't be there.
Yeah. I don't know.
There's sometimes you just go, we're just going to hit the big red dump button.
We're in a state. I reckon this weekend that just came and gone, it's a mulligan weekend.
It's a mulligan.
Have that one off. I don't know what the hell that was. Let's have a look at some of the results because we go Carlton bashed Geelong in the last quarter. Port, I don't know, at home, they're just not quite there. Got flogged by Brisbane. GWS Sydney, the Battle of the Bridge. It's pretty one-sided at the moment with Sydney getting the dub. Melbourne just knocked off, went home three-quarter time. Essendon getting the chocolates over West Coast, and they're sticking in that top 4, which is interesting because a lot of us thought they would kind of fall away as they go, but they beat West Coast. West Coast did try. They're a competitive team at the moment. And Freo got the chocolates over Gold Coast in Perth. So let's have a look at some of the big questions from the week. And I want to ask you some of these because we're coming out of a bye. The byes are done.
Yeah,
we're finished with those byes. And I tell you, for one, I am stoked that they're gone because they were just so spread out.
Yeah.
How many? You had 2 byes, didn't you?
Well, we had the round 0, so then we had a bye for that, and then we had our bye during the midseason, so we had 2 byes, yep. But then I think because we had like Anzac Day fell in the middle of the kind of week and stuff, then you make that bye in there so you don't have like a 3 or 4 day or 5 day break, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I want to ask you how the byes rolled out, but the byes in general. Should we scrap this, whatever this was this year, scrap that, scrap probably... Let's start with opening round. Are we scrapping that or are we keeping that?
Oh, man. I wasn't a massive fan of it.
Yep.
I think like after we went all the way to a grand final playing that and then like having less kind of recovery time into it. And I think also the people who are playing round 0 are usually the teams that make finals.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're trying to pump it up to be a big ordeal or like a kind of rematch or like some kind of rivalry or whatever it is. And usually the people who are kind of bringing those kind of, I guess, viewers to TV that they're trying to put in that slot are the ones that haven't had as much time off since their last game.
So you get even less prep time as someone that goes deep into finals. You're already starting late and then you start early the next year.
Yeah, and I think it's not ideal. Like everyone's got their benefits, I guess, of being a Melbourne team or travel or all these kind of things that people say there's an unfair advantage of. But that's kind of the way I looked at it and the way I kind of saw round zero. It did allow for, I guess, a break, 4 or 5 weeks into the season for us, a little bit longer break. I mean, no one gets enough time to go travel anywhere, really. It's just like an extended 3-day break, right? Yeah. So it's not like a massive kind of break like the midseason break. But I don't really love the way the bye system is set up.
No.
It just seems like, for a long time, I feel like everyone was like, oh, Sydney's top of the table, and they've got a bye, still waiting to use. Like, they've still got another bye. And I'm like, how long is this bye going to be put in this pocket? Like, is this actually going to be used at some point? And I just have no idea, because then you look at the ladder and you're like, oh, wow, these teams are in the top 8. Then you're like, oh, but they're 2 games behind someone else who hasn't played. And you're like, well, the ladder makes no sense. So then why are we even looking at this thing?
Yeah.
It's like if we all had the same bye or maybe the 2-week decision between the 2 byes, then you maybe make some sense of what you're looking at. But until everyone's back on the same amount of games they've played, the ladder makes no sense and it doesn't matter. People are like, oh, dude, all of a sudden we won this game. We're top 4, we're top 8. It's like, yeah, but then there's another team who is, 1 game behind playing you. And if they essentially tie or win a game, then they're kicking you out of the top 8.
Yeah. This week, I think we're 15 rounds in. It's the first week where the ladder is fully up to date.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be waiting to see how it's all panning out. And I don't know, if I had my ideal bye system set up, I'd just go the half and half. Over a 2-week period, half teams off, half teams on, flip it, and then we're back into it.
Well, what it comes down to is broadcast rights. They want a game every single week, right? They want to be able to show something on Channel 7 and have that as a primetime game. And I get that side of it, but also I think even people in the industry and stuff would love to have a full shutdown period of everything. Because you think people are at AFL House, people are working at Fox Footy or Channel 7, wherever it is, even for the week that technically is a bye week, that goes over 2 weeks. So then they don't actually ever have a bye week. They're still traveling, announcers are still going there, commentators are still having to go across the country. They don't actually get a break. So I think for everyone to sit there and go, cool, everyone's having their break at this specific week, just makes a bit more sense to me.
Yeah, I don't like
it's a long year.
I don't like the pre-finals bye from a fan perspective where you just don't get anything to watch or do and you have to just wait an extra week for the finals to roll around when you're amped up and ready to go.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I can see the benefits from a player's point of view.
I think it allows for better viewing.
It makes the finals better overall, but I feel like something should be in that week. So if that's where they slot a wild card round, that would make sense.
Or, put some kind of charity game where all the teams that didn't make finals, you can recruit from all those teams and have that game played in the finals bye. Or do a basketball game or something of all the teams that didn't make finals and put together a 5v5 game or something. The AFL could fill that somehow.
Yeah, but footy by then is already weak because you've got teams that aren't making it. They've started booking players in for surgeries and stuff. We don't need another watered down weak ass game. Bring AFLX back for a round or something. I'm good. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see.
Are you not a Rampage fan?
I don't need to see AFL players out there living out their dream of being basketballers.
I'm more of a deadly guy.
Yeah. Let's jump into the father-son rule because people have been talking about this for the past couple of weeks. How many numbers and points do you get trading in picks and whatever to get your father-son? They're trying to dilute it a bit. It's pretty obvious the teams that have issues with it are the teams that haven't really been sufficiently rewarded by the father-son rule. Where I sit is I think it's, luck falls your way.
Yeah.
It's pretty even for most teams. The teams that I see that it wouldn't be even for are the teams that haven't been around as long as others. But saying that, I think as we we strip out things that are very unique to our game, year on year, we're stripping it back. I feel like father-son is one of those awesome things that have been in footy forever that it's, my dad played for the club, his dad played for the club, and now the fans get right around a father-son coming to the club. They're looking forward to it for years. they finally get to do the whole thing where it runs out. Yeah, every other year you might get a Nick Dacos that, if your team's up the top of the ladder, so that's another element of luck. Your team's at the top of the ladder when a father-son seems to line up with your club. Like, that's all like luck that goes into it. So I don't see it as favoring one team over another. And then the teams that aren't really benefiting from it at the moment are like Sydney, like based in like GWS or Gold Coast, but they've got plenty of things that, they are taking advantage of, like academy-wise and getting all these Jets in. They've had all the top 10 draft picks for the past 2 decades.
Extra cash from the AFL. Yeah,
just chill out. I feel like the father-son is just one of those super innocent, awesome, wholesome things that you like love to see the father-son stay connected to that club. And it's so much luck, but so much, the dad has to play 100 games for that club. There's emotional tie to it. And our game isn't this robotic, stiff-as thing. There's a lot of grey area melded in there. And something that's cool is the father-son rule. What do you think, mate?
I will say this. If you like the father-son rule, make the most of it while it's around. In 10 years' time, I can almost guarantee you that will not be a thing because of competitive advantage. Teams will bitch and whine because they don't have anyone that's coming up through the system that's a father-son or whatever. And they'll say it's unfair and a disadvantage and all this kind of crap, which I always found it interesting, like a father-son rule, because it is just so unique, right? I've never heard of it until I came here. And it's not necessarily an advantage. It is purely somewhat luck, right? Of whether or not you've have offspring that essentially are good at football, one, and then two, your dad or mother plays X amount of games, and then you can kind of, I guess, get priority picks. But it does add for a great feel-good experience of AFL, right? Yeah. Like seeing someone whose parents have played, seeing them at games and seeing them give them the jumper or whatever it may be, I think it is such a feel-good moment. As a player who's played 100 games, I find it really weird because people are like, hey, get to 100, and then you know what that means. And I'm like, what? And they're like, well, you can have sex with someone, have a kid, and then the kid will play for the Mighty Magpies. And I'm like, whoa, let's start step one. Let's find a partner here.
Let's have sex.
Oh man, but it's a weird dynamic when people kind of like start telling you whenever you hit 100 or like put pressure on to have kids. Yeah. And you're like, look, I don't have kids for them to play AFL. I have kids for the enjoyment of like wanting to raise a child, like not forcing them into a sport.
Yeah.
But I literally think the father-son will be gone in a decade.
Yeah. For starters, I can't imagine many people are coming up to you saying, quick, Mace, we need your father-son selection.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. I'm going, look, I appreciate the sentiment, but my kid's going into the NBA. He is my retirement. He or she is going to be my retirement plan. And you best believe he ain't touching a football. He's only touching a basketball.
And then I would say we hear a lot less about it when a father-son goes to a team that's lower on the ladder. So I reckon that tells me more that it's a real non-issue. It's people that are complaining for the sake of complaining. Right? Because if you're looking at unfair competitive advantages, I just showed you Fremantle's travel schedule.
Yeah.
And if you're not fixing that before you're fixing the father-son rule, you've got rocks in your head because they travel every second week from Perth. Where'd they go? They were at Alice Springs, then they're in Melbourne, back in Perth, then to Sydney, then to Tassie, then to Perth. Like, people bitching and moaning about one player coming across because his dad has a long-standing history with the club. The Silvanis are like the Dacos boys that they've been attached to their clubs forever, and it's something that's very amazing, and I'm sick of people bitching about it. Let's talk about the 666 warning because it gets brought up every other week on the broadcast, and I just wanted to get yours as the big fella that they ask in the middle.
They give the free kick to. Yeah. If it goes straight to the ruckman. What does the ruckman do? Handball Nick. Handball Nick. So straight away.
The 666 rule, you got to start 6 in each zone. We all know the rule. We all know what it's about. Are we still needing the warning if you're not lined up in your 666 formation?
Jeez, we're in the 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year or something of doing this. It's been a while. So I think the warning system, I think we're pretty well aware of what's going on. If you're not, then I don't know what to tell you. But I think the warning is just not a necessity anymore.
Do you think anyone uses it on purpose? Do you reckon people stand out a zone to slow the game down to get
I think you could, yeah. I'm not saying that we have. I don't think we have, but I would say other teams have probably looked at it as a strategy to maybe figure out someone that needs to move from the front line to the back line maybe late in the game or something like that, or whatever it is. Say, hey, now stay out. Just put 5 in the forward line so then we can kind of fix our formation if we haven't had a warning yet. Like that's an easy way of saying, oh, we're going to get a few extra seconds to be able to figure this out. But the thing is, Rod, is like you have the time that you need to essentially set up. I think it's 30 seconds, whoever it is, after you kick a goal.
Yeah.
Now, that 30 seconds is kind of, there's like, where do you have that displayed for the players, right? I think that you have it on the big screen. But it's just like such a weird dynamic. There needs to be there needs to be, you know, like soccer has like a person that says like 9 extra minutes on the side. That's run by not either team. It's run by the umpires essentially, right?
Yeah.
I think what should happen is there should be someone on the sideline that is AFL, neither team, because the teams do have their own specific signs, that should be holding up something that shows the time like that, you know? Because I think like you sit there and you look at the screen and the screen's looking at highlights or something else is going on, whatever it is, like there needs to be a designated thing that's free of distractions that shows the time that you have to be able to set up or the time for, you know, a set shot.
Yeah, I actually didn't even think about that. Like, how do you know how long you have? You know
when the screen's working, and you look up there. That's how you know how much time's left whenever you're doing a set shot. And then whenever 6 seconds is there, the umpire says, "Move it on."
Yeah, right.
It's a really weird dynamic because that's why people look up to the screen, because the umpire doesn't have a time or a watch that he's sitting there going, "You've got 10 seconds, you got 5 more seconds, you got 2 seconds." Like that doesn't happen. You just kind of get this vague understanding by a clock that's ticking in the background. That's not really attached to the umpire whatsoever.
Yeah.
So let's say you get like a ball kicked into you and you bobble it around, you get injured on the way down, whatever it is, and you get back up and the clock's already started. You're going, okay, well, I've got 5 seconds essentially now to figure out how I'm going to kick this goal.
I've seen that happen.
And it's like, and then the umpire is maybe going, nah, you've got more time, but then the clock's telling you don't have more time. So then you're kind of like, well, what is it? You know? So I think there needs to be a better way or system of doing that, whether it's an umpire whistle to say, you know, it's starting now, finishing now, or whatever it is. I'm not sure how it would be handled, but I think there is room for improvement.
Speaking of room for improvement, we've tried to improve the umpiring by adding an extra one this year.
Yep.
It's just run in and run around. I reckon we should start fielding 18, 4 on the bench umpires that run out there as their own mini team, and you assign 1 umpire to each player.
Yep.
Because I reckon more umpires...
Geez, I might get a free kick if that's the case.
Imagine that. They all just start fighting, punching on, scrapping, jumper punching. No, we've got the extra umpire this year, and I want to get your view on it without you getting fined, because I feel like...
Consistent issue we have on this podcast.
Yeah, I feel like it's been denied that there's like an issue with the extra umpire, but it seems to be the clearest outlier from last year to this year where the umpires are really slow and delayed on the whistle. They're looking around. They're waiting for out-of-area confirmation. They're getting spoken to in their ears. There's too many chefs in the kitchen, they would say. But I don't know. The AFL seems to come out and tick off on everything. But have you noticed a difference in the game with the extra umpire, and do you think it's necessary?
I think it is necessary at the moment because, I mean, I don't know the details behind this, but I have an opinion as of there is not enough umpires coming through the system at a consistent pace compared to previous years. And I think what the AFL is doing is they're trying to fast track people's experience by putting more umpires on the field and surrounding them with people that are more experienced to help them get fast tracked into being what you could say is an experienced umpire. I think that's what's happening.
But wouldn't that then rely on numbers being stripped out eventually? Otherwise, you're using all your umpires on all the games. They can't umpire other games because they're tired because they just umpired games. So it's like you are getting their experience in them, but then you almost need to strip it back to the previous amount of umpires. Otherwise,
yeah, I mean,
it doesn't work.
I get where you're coming from, but I think they're just trying at this moment. Like, I look at some of the umpires and stuff out there, and I don't know how many games, the experience they have, and how many games of VFL and AFL and all that kind of stuff. But I see a lot of new faces
Yeah.
I see a lot of new faces, and I think that's a sign that they're trying to get experience into people. And it's probably a sign of me, being in the league for a decent amount of time also. But you look at the Brett Rosebeers who's, finished up, who's done far out. How many games did he do? Like 400 games or something ridiculous. And then you got Razor Ray, you've got all these guys who, I guess public figures for umpiring, right? They're faces of the umpiring world.
Yeah.
And people look to them for direction on even just, things that happen in other games, not even technically their games that they umpire. People want their opinion as to what they think is the greatest, what the actual right decision is. But I think 4 umpires is needed at the moment from AFL side. It is something they're trying to still get used to, I think. This is the first time they're ever doing it, really. So I think it's going to take a few years for them to go, okay, this is now normal. This is not something that's changing. We're committing to this for the next however long it's going to be. So whenever you teach people, you need to teach them zones, or you need to teach them areas, and you need to teach them how to communicate as the game goes on.
Yeah.
And that's a learning curve that's going to take years. And I think that's what we're in right now, which causes frustration. I can get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I look at it and I think the more umpires that you're trying to slot in there, you're just diluting the quality. That's how I see it.
But I still see sometimes as like an experienced umpire will overrule someone who's closer to the contest. And let's say the experienced umpire is 100 meters away and there's another umpire that's 50 meters away that makes a call or something. The experienced umpire sometimes will go from 100 meters away and overrule the person that's right next to him.
Yeah.
I have seen that multiple times this year.
Yeah, no, I've seen that a lot this year.
So you do know there is a hierarchy within the umpires on the field.
Yeah.
You can see it.
But
so you got to think that there is essentially a learning curve between the two that's trying to be taught and passed down to another umpire.
Yeah, which I see making those other umpires gun shy, which is why I feel like there's a lag in the communication, which then we see incidents like Stephen May getting dumped or whoever getting dumped because there's a delay on the whistle. They've been told to call it faster. They've been there's so much communication there from the AFL house through to the umpires, through to the multiple umpires on field.
I feel for umpires because it is one of the hardest things to be someone who has to make decisions on an opinionated sport.
Yeah.
Every decision you make, whether it be a holding ball, not, free kick, not, there's no clear-cut rule. It is almost purely opinionated on each umpire. So you might have one umpire that goes, okay, I want to umpire this as a grand final, so essentially no free kicks. Then you might have another umpire goes, whoa, hold on, every time you get touched, I'm going to call that a free kick. And it's just purely based on how you adjudicate things.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things to do. And then the IFL goes and changes rules throughout the season of how things are supposed to be adjudicated, and then you have to be updated on that. And it's a wild process that is unlike any other sport in the world. I don't know any other sport that just decides to change rules in the middle of the season.
Yeah. Well, interpretations. You got to make that clear. They don't change the rules. They change how they're interpreted, Mason.
You could almost say that's a changing of the rule.
Let's jump into this one because this isn't my opinion. I actually like the Big Briss, but
the Big BT!
BT's come under fire. Now, a lot of people say someone comes under fire when 14.5 people on Twitter tweet out about them and they make an article off the back of it. But there's been a bit of a petition put out there that BT be removed as the head commentator from Channel 7's footy coverage just because people don't like his vibe. Now, I don't know if that's if you can take that to HR and put that in there.
If someone's saying they don't like his vibe, I think that's probably the demographic of under 25.
Yeah, the vibe check. But I want to ask you, out of all the things that we should scrap, should we be scrapping BT from Channel 7's commentary team?
Hell no. BT is one of the things you can have your opinions on, like commentators. That's your own decision, whatever it may be. But I think Brian Taylor is good for the game because he provides something that's totally different to any other commentator. He provides entertainment, he provides energy, and it's unique. And I think that is something that people don't probably give enough credit to. He cops a lot of shit from people for no reason. I think it's just because, I don't know if he's a Collingwood supporter and people just hate Collingwood, therefore they hate him or whatever it may be. But I find it wild how much criticism he has. And he's done that job for a long time. So, it's just part of the experience is if you've done anything for a long time, you're just going to get haters.
Yeah.
And that's just that's just part of media, right? But I think Brian's just someone who, I mean, like, put yourself in his position. Imagine Channel 7 just rocking up to you and going, hey, here's a mic. Just go interview people in the rooms.
Yeah.
How many other commentators would thrive in that scenario?
Well, that was his idea. He brought that concept to the table. So he's bringing new stuff. I think the multiple arguments that I hear against BT, one, I like him better on Triple M. And I feel like that needs to be explained a little bit to people that Triple M have their key demographic, which is men aged between, 18 through to 65 or whatever it is. So they speak to that audience. And to do that, he can be completely and utterly himself. And he's got a team that they've built chemistry with, including James Brayshaw, and they've been doing it for decades. They know how each other works, they know their sense of humor, and they know that key demographic and that brand, which is Triple M. Channel 7's very different. You got to speak to families, you got to speak to men, women, children. You got to be on brand with Channel 7. You got to be able to tick off everything because it needs to be able to appeal to all advertisers of all brand categories, from washing detergent through to, Macca's through to everything. So there's two different things that he has to be able to completely cater to. And that's a hard thing in itself. You got to be able to, on one game, on a Friday night, rock up and cater to the Channel 7 audience, which is everyone. And then on a Saturday night game, you got to be able to roll into Triple M and talk shit with the boys because you're speaking to a male audience. I think that's one argument that I hear. And then the other argument is coming off the back of he's first up, essentially off the back of the legacy that's Bruce McAvaney and Dennis Committee, which are two of the all-time greats of commentary across all sport. They do multiple different sports, especially Bruce. And I feel like people are comparing him to them and saying he should be more like them, and that's not his style. He said there's a varying different styles amongst commentators. Some show up with every stat. Some show up with background knowledge of every player and have stories about their families and their upbringings that they bring to the commentary and bring flavor to it. That's not BT. BT tries to entertain. He tries to color it in. He commentates from the moment and from his heart, and that's something different to what the others do. And he is also an ex-player lead commentator, so he can speak through experience, whereas someone like a Bruce McAvaney wouldn't dare speak ill of anyone because he's never done it. He never played it. So he was great at pumping up players for their ability and their showmanship, and he'd bring life to a moment, whereas BT has experience. So he can talk people through it.
Calls on it.
Yeah, he can talk people through it from his perspective. Oh, when you're here on this pocket from the MCG, you got to kick it at this post and stuff like that. Whereas Bruce and Dennis aren't really doing that. That's not what they bring. So I feel like, it's comparison that's getting him a fair bit, and then the demographic, and then who else are you going to replace him with is the final part, because they don't grow on trees.
No. I think people believe that commentary is way easier than it actually is. I think people just think they just rock up, they just sit there, they just talk about the football and, they don't do any kind of research. You would be amazed. Some of the people I know in the industry, we've had Abby Helms on this podcast, and I've talked to her about what she has to prep, and she's a sideline reporter, and then now she's getting into a bit of the commentary stuff now. And it is phenomenal the amount of work she does behind the scenes.
And she's very good.
And she is and there's a reason, because she works her ass off to be very good. She knows all the statistics, and they have a person they can go to be able to ask questions of them to say what's the percentage shots here or there or whatever it is, and get some background knowledge for someone to go and research to come back to them, so then they have a nugget whenever it comes to the game to give to the audience, right? And I think people just, with BT, whenever you have a commentary career, everyone brings their different things, right?
Yeah.
BT's entertainment. You might have Luke Hodge, who's more, straight down the line. This is experience that I've had. This is the way I see it. You have every different diverse kind of person on a panel, but I think he just brings something that's totally unique. I think he's very well educated in what he actually does talk about. I think people just want to talk shit about someone because they're different. I know that's a very Australian thing, and for some reason, he's a target because He's, entertaining, he's loud, everyone knows who he is, he's different, he goes and, does weird things, and, everyone knows roaming Brian.
Yeah.
Everyone knows he interacts with all the players, and I think all the players have a massive amount of respect for what he has to do and what he gets pushed into, doing with different people. Like, I think sometimes, he goes down there and he can tell people don't want to talk to him, but Channel 7's probably in his ear going, nah, Chad Warner played amazing today. Go talk to him and his family. I don't care. Yeah. And that's a hard position to be in, to sit there and try to force yourself into a conversation whenever people don't want to have it. And he does it so well. It's not easy. I think more people need to give credit to him and stop being so berative whenever it comes to his feedback, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And if you say to yourself, I do like it when he takes the piss, think, are you in that key demographic?
Are you a Triple M person?
You're a Triple M person.
Are you a Channel 7 person, right?
All right, and I want to bring up one more thing before we move on to the big winners for the week, but Dangerfield's tackle. I don't know if you saw this.
Dangerfield's dangerous tackle, you could say?
Well, that's what I want to ask you about, because Danger tackled Sammy Walsh in an incident where Walsh is running away. Danger's coming up, trailing behind him. Walsh tries to get his arms free to handball over the top. Danger, in a vice-like grip, grabs him, pins the arms, and takes him in a tackle where it's almost like he's stealing second base.
Yeah.
He's got the slide going. He doesn't hit his head on the ground. He hits it almost on Danger's lap, but gets done for the dangerous tackle, and they've given him a week for it. I looked at that one, and I feel like each week we're going to discover a new way to dangerously tackle someone.
Yep.
And this was the first time I've seen a motion like this. And now normally they always like to bring up old stuff when they go to tribunal. It's like this. This guy got off. But yeah, I haven't seen anything kind of like this before. And I was just wondering, how else would he go about this tackle in the circumstance that he was in? It's either let him get the handball out and not tackle, or tackle him and let him get the handball out and don't get done for dangerous tackle, or tackle the way that he did.
Yeah, I've come to the realization, I think the AFL's made this very clear, is if there's any kind of like motion of someone's head slinging or kind of like whiplashing into the ground, it's going to be a week. No matter how you tackle them or how it happens, like it's going to be a week. That's kind of what they've come to adjudicate it as. Danger's one like this. It's so hard. Like tackling someone like that and then trying to at the same time like let an arm free, but you don't want them to dispose of it at the same. Like it's just so hard. And if Sam somehow, like kind of falls on the side, then probably not an issue. Like there's so many things that could happen. The what ifs. I get it from the AFL standpoint. Any whiplash is going to be a week. They've made that very clear. Danger, how he could have done that better. Like I don't know if you just can only grab one arm and the other one's got to go across the body. You can't grab both arms, kind of thing. Like that's maybe, I guess, the way the AFL is going to say how you could have done that better. But in the moment and everything else, like good Lord, to be able to process that in that short of a time frame of trying to tackle someone would be pretty phenomenal within itself. I just think it's one of those that Danger, unfortunately, is just on the shit into the stick whenever it comes to this. And he's just going to have to deal with one game, or, maybe he can go to the tribunal and try to get it, taken away. But yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's almost impossible to sit there and say, now, are we going to go, look, you can't grab both arms and take them to ground? You can grab both arms and stand up, but if you take them to ground, then it's technically a free kick.
Yeah.
But you can't, if someone sits there, let's say hypothetically, someone has the ball at their hips and they're just holding it at the bottom, right? Like, well, you can't tackle below their legs. You can't tackle above their shoulders. So if you tackle them, you're going to have to be getting both arms. So if the person just falls forward, is it a free kick?
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Should I just be walking around acting like I'm about to kick the ball all the time so I can get a free kick no matter what? And then if someone touches me, I just fall to the ground. I'm like, oh, dangerous tackle.
We found a loophole. Just walk around like, it's always the primary school movement where it's like
little penguin waddle.
Yeah. We got him. We bloody got him. That's a good point, though. I hadn't actually thought about that. But we'll wait and see. That'll happen now.
You'll see me do it the first game back. Mason's got an odd way after his injury of getting around the game.
Let's jump into the big winners for the week, because we've plucked out a couple. And I want to just say this. Brisbane Football Club is back. And they've been back since the bye. Now, Dunk's brought up on his podcast that at the mid-season break when they did have their bye, they looked at their stats and based on this year's stats and last year's stats, they were equal, if not better, in most stats except for one, and that was kicking accuracy, goal kicking accuracy. Now, on the weekend, they didn't have that many issues with that because I think they kicked 23 goals, 13 or 14 or such. So they've got the accuracy part right, and now they're blowing teams away. Do you reckon the Brisbane Lions are back?
I will say yes for now.
Yeah.
I think, that was one of their big issues, I think, was the goal kicking stuff. I think Hipwood had 5 over the weekend, kicked 12 straight them at one stage, so they've fixed it for the time being. But I think it was kind of interesting because at the beginning it was all like, oh, there's a culture issue and this kind of stuff, and then now it's like, oh, well, what's the excuse we're going to talk about now in the media? Like, oh, this or that, It's interesting, and I think because they made a grand final last year, there's always going to be a bit of a microscope on them for this year.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think the Brisbane team has so much time now where they can take this momentum and go through the end of the season. You know what no one's going to be talking about? The beginning.
Yeah.
If you sit there and win the next few games, everyone's going to be going, oh, cool, like they're in finals. Like, oh, sick, they're a chance to win this whole thing again, And no one's going to be even remembering the conversations that were held at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So I think they have a big chance now, and they've turned it on at the right time because if they weren't being successful 3-4 games ago, then it was going to be real tough for them to be able to get over the line to get to finals. But now having these 3 wins in a row, they're in form again now. It's an important time for them to be in form, to be able to make finals and be able to make a run. And I think that's it's a good sign for Brisbane fans.
I reckon a lot of those people, the statisticians at the start of the year that say, if you lose the first 2 games of the year, statistically, you're not going to make finals and all that crap. How long is this season? I feel like if there's ever a team if there's ever a year to start shit and come good, it's this year because so many teams keep falling down. It's very tight. It's tight in terms of the competition, but I feel not many teams outside of Sydney are really stepping up. Collingwood had the slow start. You guys have come good. Essendon have been remarkably consistent. Carlton have had a couple of patches.
How hyped would the AFL be right now with the top 4? You've got Sydney, the team they want to be successful and try to get into New South Wales market.
Yeah.
Then you've got the 3 biggest teams in Victoria. You've got Carlton, Essendon, and Collingwood sitting at 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
AFL would have the biggest hard-on right now. Straight up. They would be going, someone make sure we're making a fuck ton of money out of this.
They need the Gold Coast Suns to have a late run at finals, and then they're there. That's the finisher. Big O also kicked 3 snags.
Yeah, shout out to the Big O.
I like the Big O having a few snaggles in there.
Let's go. Let's move to the next game. What we got?
We got Carlton demolished the Cats, but it was a bit late. Yep. Cats were in it most of the way. We don't know where they're sitting at the moment because they're a bit up and down, but Carlton did kind of change up their style a bit. There was a lot of free-flowing run, which really kind of helped out their forwards, and it was reflected on the scoreboard. Charlie kicked 5, Harry kicked 3, Little Owies popped up and kicked 3 himself. Did the whole... got his Carlton jumper out and he was showing the cheer squad like he loves to do. So they're all up and about, but it was the last quarter where all the damage was done. Carlton kicked 9 goals to 3 and kind of just knocked it on their head. But there was a couple of incidents out of this one, but we will say Carlton, big winners for the weekend, and they're right up in the top 4. A couple of interesting ones. Jez had a shot at goal after the siren and arced off his line, which is very obvious because he kicked it next to the man on the mark. Kicked the goal.
It's definition offline.
Everyone kind of looked a bit confused, but it was almost like it was too long to make a negative decision, so they just said, let's call it a goal. Gov was the man on the mark, and he made a very, smart point to the umpire who just gave him nothing. It was like,
love that.
I don't know, you're probably right, but it happened. So
I'm not going to admit it.
Let's move on. And the De Koning brothers played against each other. Now,
very cute.
It started strong with a ruck contest. So Sam plays for Geelong. And who's the other one?
Tom
Tom plays for Carlton.
Yeah.
TDK because that's Robbie Williams' favorite player, right?
Yep.
All right, well, we got that under cover. We got that under control.
The doppelganger effect. We had, who do we have? We had we had Harry McCaw and Ben McCaw. Harry and Ben. And then now we've got the DeConing brothers on each other.
And they all got real stock standard 3-letter names. We like it. But yeah, so we started off with Tom in the ruck contest against Sam. And
threw him, ragdolled him.
But Sam was going for that, like, I'm just going to run through him here. And he did a bit of the old Toro and let him stepped out of the way, got it, kicked the goal from the ruck contest. That was a beautiful one.
That's the most embarrassing thing you can do to a ruckman.
Oh, it's rough.
It's a real tough feeling there. So he would have loved that being the brother, just going, hey, that's 1-0, sir.
Well, I'll tell you who loved it was the DeConing mum because she was up in the stands.
She had one of those scarves that's like half and half.
The cliche scarf. But she was loving it. Later on in the game, Sam got a free kick for an unrealistic attempt. So we'll give him one, but he got one back. So mum was happy up in the stands. Each boy kicks a goal. You know, there's no fights in the car on the way home. But that was a good one. A bit of a sour note.
What change room did she go to?
The winners.
Does she? I don't know. Mothers might need to console the person that lost. I don't know. That's a real decision of who's the favorite.
That's a good call.
That's what we should have. We should have mom watch. Mum watch, see where she goes after the game.
Do like the mums on this
Then we can all judge
podcast.
her. Who she loves more.
We'll jump across. Unfortunately, big Tommy Hawkins injured his foot.
Yeah.
Kind of just collapsed on him.
Yeah, he's a big fella.
Does have to cart around that big frame every week, so hopefully he gets back out there. I don't want that to be the last time we see him, but if we don't see you out in the field, we'll see you at another Taylor Swift concert, double parked like you were in the preseason. We'll go across to the big losers, and there's no bigger loser this week than Port Adelaide Football Club. Unfortunate to say it, because we do love our boy Ken Hinckley.
We love Kenny, and he's copping it at the moment.
He's absolutely under the blowtorch at the moment.
This is a yearly thing, though. This is a yearly thing with Kenny. He loses a game at home, and the Port Adelaide supporters all turn on him. They're like, "Oh my Kenny, give it." And then you know what he does? He wins 2 or 3 games, and you know what they say? Kenny's my boy. I've been behind him the whole time. I love him. He should be sign him for a 10-year contract.
And he's out there.
It's the same shit every year, Port Adelaide fans.
He's out there doing the jig, but they are sitting 8th, so it's not all over yet, but. They've lost 3 of their last 3, and 2 of those have been home games, so not what you want, and they absolutely got flogged.
I feel like as a Port Adelaide supporter, they're sometimes okay with losses away, but losing at home is a real no for them. They do not handle that well.
Yeah, well, they do the whole crap with holding the scarf up and then.
Well, then you got to walk through the crowd to get down to the ground.
Yeah, they should do
They don't have the elevators. It's purely out in the.
You ever watched
what was it, Dimmer? Was it Dimmer that gave a bit of lip?
It's pretty much every coach has had a punch on with someone in the crowd at Adelaide Oval.
You think the IFL, with safety and security being hopefully number 1, they would change that by now, but here we are.
I reckon, do you ever watch wrestling growing up?
Not a lot. I could see you definitely.
The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. He would get the cable into WrestleMania from the stands. You'd cable down to the ring. Maybe one of them with Kenny Hinckley on it. He just cables down.
I would pay so much money for that to see that visual. Oh my gosh, can we make this happen? Do it in Perth. Perth's got the cable. I know Optus has the ability to do it.
I'm putting it out there to the AFL. And we'll give the second biggest loser slot to Melbourne. They got the win, so it kind of seems contradictory, but they really did park the bus at the end of the third. They didn't kick a score in the last quarter, not a point, not a crumb. But that was North Melbourne coming home strong, which was the opposite they did to the week before, where obviously Collingwood came home strong. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but there was some interesting points.
Bit of fight in this one, you could say. There was a bit of a scrap in this game, and I'd love to see. I have no idea how much money is going to get thrown from the players for the fines, but it was good to see.
Yeah, don't mind a bit of a punch on. In the back of my head now, in the back of my head now, every time I see one of those scraps, I'm like, no one's going to do anything, you know? So it's kind of a bit lost on me now. Back in the day, I was like,
it's just supporting your teammates. Someone's getting tagged or something too.
But you got to do shake them a bit. I'm just going to come over and shake you a bit, mate.
Different. I mean, like whenever I first came here, it was like no one really shook you. People grabbed your jumper so that they could punch you in the face.
Jumper punches
That's what it was.
You could jumper punch then, and then they outlawed the jumper punch.
But you could hit them high. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was a way of just, I guess, disguising the fact that you can punch someone in the face.
Yes.
And then you started wearing tighter jersey, and you're like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I just think back to like the line in the sand game and like Richie Vandenberg kneeing blokes on the ground and stuff. Anyway, we don't need to bring it back. We're a family game. But we will talk about the tagger because if you wanted to scrag one bloke, it's the tagger. But Will Phillips, he learnt what he learnt in the Nick game. Nick Dacos against North. He got subbed out at the third and Nick ran away with it. But he had Clayton Oliver this week and he held him to 5 touches to half time. And Clayton gave away 4 free kicks. So it's fair to say that he was in his head a bit. So I reckon that you give him the chocolates for that one.
Yeah.
Trent Rivers, they moved him into the midfield without track, and he was up on disposals, kicked a cracking goal on the run, danced around a few, burst through the pack. That was great to see. But we're all here for North Melbourne, who kicked 5 straight in the fourth quarter. I think that's impressive. And then managing to keep Melbourne scoreless is big ticks for the North Melbourne Football Club.
I mean, it wasn't a high-scoring game either. So to kick 5 straight in a fourth quarter, like that was almost half their points just in the fourth quarter right there to come home strong and not let them kick any. It's a credit to them. I don't know, like North is one of those just, people don't look at them as an easy win anymore. You got to be prepped for North to give you a fair crack. Yeah. Like they are willing to take teams to the line. Like where I think a lot of probably fans and stuff in previous years thought, North Melbourne, easy W, right? Well, like you look at last week, Collingwood going down by a significant margin by them, and then now them taking Melbourne, who's another top team, to the line. Like you look at North and you say, look, it's not going to be an easy game. You got to rock up and give your best.
Yeah, and it comes off the back of if you have a win, then you go, that's what we need to do. You got a blueprint.
Yeah.
Okay, if we do that every week, we're going to win or at least be competitive. And since they got the win, they've definitely been competitive. Probably should have got a win or two. So it's great to see. Now, we all wanted to just see a sign from North, and we probably didn't think that it would come mid-season. Because if you're in one of those teams that's struggling, normally the lowest depths come in the middle of the season when you're far away from the excitement of the start, and you're a hell of a long way from postseason celebrations and holidays, and you're right in the thick of it, but they've come good in the middle. So it's big credit to North. Melbourne, on the other hand, they have to go up to Brisbane and verse Brisbane at the Gabba next week, which could be rough.
So take Brisbane over on that one, I think, on that game. But it's going to be an interesting game. That'll be almost a game of the round next week. I'm pretty excited to watch that one.
I'm trying to find my mouse here, Mace, as we move over to Collingwood. We missed last week, so we will touch on a couple of things that happened in the Collingwood-North game. It was a pretty uneventful game, really. I
think it was one of the most eventful games there's ever been, Brayden, you would say.
Let's jump into it because Collingwood, I was saying it sitting on the couch, watching as someone that wanted Collingwood to win the game, that the first half, IMO, in my opinion, pretty weak because they said outwardly into the media in the week leading up, we think Collingwood are gettable. And I was thinking, in the lead up as a coach, going against a team down the bottom of the ladder, you're looking for inspiration. And it's kind of hard to find it when you're coming up against these bottom teams.
Yeah.
There's your inspiration. Print out that, stick it up on the wall. Beauty, they reckon we're really gettable this week. Let's go out and show them what we can do. Brayden Maynard's 200th game. I expected...
TJ's first game.
I expected a big game. And then North just hit the ground running. They came out, put goals on the board, and they didn't stop. They just kept kicking goals. And Collingwood were chasing. They were trying to chase. But for the first 3 quarters, North just kept putting margin on them. And it was wild. It didn't look like there was going to be a turning point. But in classic Collingwood fashion...
You wouldn't believe it.
Let's leave it very late in the piece. Fly did come out after the game and say at 3/4 time, he put the rockets up the lads to say, look, Brayden Maynard is the heart and soul of the club. He does plenty for everyone else, and at the moment, he's the only one trying out there. So get out there and put on a performance for your teammate. And it seemed to turn around from that moment because they came home strong and chased down a 52 point, 54 point deficit and
to win by 1.
And got the points by 1. And there was a couple of moments.
There was a chance to North had to actually take the game too.
So let's talk about that. You reckon that was a 50-meter penalty in that game?
I didn't see anything. No, it wasn't. What happened? No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's talk about why you didn't see anything, because you started via Instagram. You started the game at the ground. So here we go. Let's go, lads. Photo of the ground.
I copped a bit of criticism for this too.
And then we see you sitting and watching the rest of the game at home on the couch. Now, you're not a fair weather supporter, are you, Mace? You would have stuck it out.
I'm not. You know what the wild thing is Bruzzy plus TJ having their big milestone games. I had a friend in town from the US who came all the way out here to watch me play. I got injured, couldn't go to the game. I couldn't get a ticket for him. So I felt so guilty for them who had come all the way from the US to come watch me play. We're sitting in my house watching the game on television without me there, just by themselves. I was like, shit, I'm going to stay. I'm going to be there for the boys whenever they run out and all that kind of stuff, and at quarter time I'll head back and get home, because I've had some interesting interactions, Brayden, since I've been injured, whenever it comes to sitting in the crowd. I've had a few people that are very inebriated come up to me and make some comments. I've had some people ask me about my political opinion of the U.S. at the moment, which is a wild scenario and thing to ask me in the middle of a football game. But I've been, you could say, hassled at games.
Yeah. Well, you can't hide.
And that's, I understand. And it's kind of a weird thing I've found amazing that the AFL hasn't put players who are not playing in a box.
Yeah.
For kind of safety reasons, I think. Like, you think about like you sit in the stands, like you sit in a bay with other people around, and it's usually friends and family in there. But like anyone, there's not a security guard there making sure that people don't walk down. So like anyone just comes up if they see you and just will try to sit next to you or take the seat next to you whenever you know it's not their seat because they're not friends and family.
Yeah.
So I mean, at one point, I had a guy come and sit next to me. It was double parked, and he was very inebriated and was sitting there trying to talk to me about the game. And I'm sitting there going, "You can't even put a sentence together."
To be fair, I've been.
And I'm like,
I've been there.
The guy wasn't you. I wouldn't put it past you by any means, Brayden. But it is a thing where I think of, like the safety of players and stuff at times. I think whenever you include alcohol, very emotional people, if it's a rivalry or something like that, like there needs to be a bit of safety for the players that AFL needs to look after. And I haven't really experienced it as much because I've been, I haven't really been in the stands, fortunately, very often over the last few years. But I did realize that. And whenever we're at the North game, I had the decision to go home and watch it with my friend who couldn't get a ticket or try to stay at the game and, deal with people that were coming up or people that were just in the stands. And you walk down to the rooms and you walk back up and you have to go through the crowd to get there too. So you get people grabbing you and stuff like that. And it's an interesting, like you want to support the fans and be there for the fans and stuff like that. But you got to realize that there also is opposition supporters that are at that game.
Yeah.
That, are emotionally charged and things like that too. So it's an interesting dynamic. I haven't really put much thought to, but that's kind of one of the reasons, to be honest, I went home. And I just sometimes don't feel comfortable sitting in the stands with opposition supporters and people having the ability to walk up to you.
Yeah. And I
don't know if that's a controversial thing to say.
Nah, I can't imagine.
Like, I'm there to support the fans. It's great to have the fans there, and it's awesome to sit with them and stuff like that. But I think whenever you mix them in with people who are not those fans or people that might hate you because you play for an opposition team and you allow them to be mixed in with alcohol and things like that, it's leading to what I would say is going to be an inevitable bad situation that's going to happen in the stands between a player and a fan.
Yeah.
And the AFL is not doing their due diligence to protect the players.
Yeah. And I feel like we can't really be surprised if or when that does happen.
Yeah.
Once you add alcohol to the mix, it gives people that confidence. It's the same type of confidence that when people are in the comfort of their own home and they slide into your DMs and sledge you for a number of reasons. I've definitely, I can see that happening for sure. I've been with you in the streets when you can't escape people. When you're at the games, I get noticed at the games, which is freaky as.
Hilarious.
But Yeah, so
It worries me a bit because whenever you have about 4 or 5 tinnies, Brayden, there's no telling what's coming out of your mouth. So
that's the thing. I got to realize that I am extremely famous now, and I need to settle things down.
You got to hold the standard now, Brayden.
But we will talk about Brayden Maynard because you did manage to get the win for the big fella. 200 games, massive accomplishment, a massive achievement. He's
first one of the draft class to get to 200.
Really?
Yeah.
So that draft class.
So you got to think it's like myself, Darcy, Jordy, Bruzzy. There's a few in there that have been around for a while, and he's the first one to get to 200.
Yeah, just thinking back to when he was younger, the big
little baby face is
big baby face looking Brayden Maynard.
Like, everyone's like that though. Like I had a baby face, Jordy, Darcy. We've all grown up quite a bit now.
What a talented draft class that was.
It's pretty wild how many of us are still around.
Yeah, that's.
I think about it, and I'm like, man, it's a very unique. You don't see a group that stays around that's all drafted in the same draft class like we've seen.
No, that's a good one. Derek Hahn would tick that one off.
He'd be happy with himself.
We'll tick that one off. You can live off that forever.
Of course, Mason Cox, top. Top of that list.
And Nick Dacos in that game as well got off the. He shook the tag in the last quarter and it did some damage.
Off the leash.
I think he had 29, kicked 2, dragged the boys.
Every score involvement in the fourth quarter was him.
Yeah, it's pretty wild what he's still managing to achieve as a father-son that we're going to keep forever. But let's move on to another former champion of Collingwood and now in the Hall of Fame, Dane Swan.
Swanee!
It's pretty amazing when you look at it and think of people that still aren't in the Hall of Fame, and Dane Swan gets inducted.
Oh, I love it.
Stands up there. You knew a good speech was coming. He's still the same person that he's always been. Dane Swan, so he would have been 2014, he would have been kind of wrapping it up as you got there.
We had 1 year crossover,
Yeah. Do you have any memories from your first year with Swanee?
Dane Swan I didn't know who he was or anything about him whenever I came here, right? And I was very young, just came out of college. He was one of those, I don't know, like iconic players of the club, but like people just loved him and loathed him, and you saw people just kind of like lose their mind around him. And like, I just never understood it because I was just like, oh, it's just like a teammate, like, oh, good. And like Pendles was the same, Trev Cloak was the same. Like, it was just like, oh, okay, cool. You didn't grasp how big of a deal they were. But yeah, Swanee, he was always really nice. Like, I think people don't realize, I mean, he's a bit of a quiet operator at times, but he's funny whenever he speaks, right? He's one of those people that doesn't speak a lot, but when he speaks, it's pretty, like, everyone gets a crack out of it. And I remember, like, when I first came here, he took me out for a night out. Like, he was part of the crew that went out and stuff. And, he's got a lovely wife and kids now, and his wife's from America, and they were just really nice. Like, you think of these things whenever you first come to a country, like, you don't need to go out of your way to invite people that you don't really know and, to try to make them feel comfortable in the scenario of a team environment and things like that. And I do remember, like, he was like, no, come out with us. Like, it was all cool. It was like him, Marley Williams, and a few others. And, it was just kind of, it was a wild night. Like, I'm not going to say any details as to what happened in the night, but I do remember, like, that him having me there, I was really appreciative of. And it's something you don't need to do.
Yeah,
but for him to just have me with his group and hanging out and like didn't have an issue with it or anything like that, for someone he didn't really know at all, like I look back on that and I'm like, oh, that would have made me feel as though I'm part of the team and I'm just, another one of the boys, and you feel like you're confident to be friendly with everyone, because it is so isolating whenever you don't know any connections, you're from a different country, you have no idea what you're doing, and for someone to do a little act like that means a lot to someone like me.
Yeah. I can imagine Dane Swan's sense of humor is a combo of kind of unassuming, dry, Australian laughs. I can't imagine that you would have got much of what he was joking about.
No, not at all. There's so much. I'll tell a story about one of the first things whenever I came into the club, right? This is the early days, and this is like whenever we had the drug issue with a few of the players and stuff. And I was just kind of like, all this was happening. I was just kind of like, this is a wild scenario. What the fuck is going on? But I remember whenever I was like introduced to the club, right, to the teams, there's a big team meeting and stuff. And, and I had zero understanding of Australian culture and like what they did. And they're like, go up and they go, hey, everyone, like we've got a new recruit. His name's Mason. We're going to introduce him. So, he's from Dallas, Texas. You know, I went to Oklahoma State, played basketball. We're going to now teach him. So, you know, just get around him. And I remember like one of the players was like, and I think it was Swanee, was just like, speech. You know, like the typical Australian thing that you do is a bit of a joke. Well, I didn't know that was a joke in Australian culture. So I kind of like stood up like, oh, okay. Like I'll give a little intro, a little bio, you know, and I like stood up and I was like, I just want to say hi. Like I'm Mason Cox. And everyone's just like, sit the fuck down. Just like, sit down. And I was like, it's just good to meet y'all. Just great to be here. Great to be involved. I'll just sit in the corner. Just shut up. Like,
Crap.
That was one of my original, I guess, coming to understanding Australian culture of taking the piss out of someone.
That was almost like when we learnt that Australians are the only ones that do hip hip for hip hip hooray.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
That is a very Australian thing.
Yeah, now I know. Let's talk about you because we need to wrap things up. But
Yep.
Going into the bye week, you headed over to Bali. How was your trip?
It was beautiful weather, massage pretty much every single day, nice lunch, breakfast, dinner, coffees every morning, sitting in the sun.
Just a relax, refresh.
It is. I think it's very important to switch off. It's a long year, as we mentioned before, and it's so good just to get away from football and like the Melbourne bubble of it. Like it is every day you get someone that comes up and wants to ask you about it everywhere you go, right? And it's so nice to just meet people from different backgrounds and different countries doing different things from online sales and e-commerce and just this kind of – Bali's kind of this like weird place of just everyone, just this multicultural melting pot of people that come in there and you know come from all over the world. So it was interesting and awesome to like just meet new people, do different things. You know, there was like a gym next to us. So I got to do rehab there, and then ice baths and saunas we got to do every single day. So it was one of those just really mentally and physically refreshing experiences over there, and just to kind of get away from, I guess, the microcosm that is AFL in Melbourne. It was nice to get away from it, and I do feel a lot more refreshed. I'm excited to kind of get through this rehab and get back out to playing, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
Do you get noticed by all the Aussies over there?
Oh, you can tell someone's Australian right away. Yeah. I was in this, like, there's a few times you go into the sauna and someone just walks up and goes, "Hey, Mason," and you're like, I didn't introduce myself, dude. Like, what do you? And you just sit there, and the other people around are like, Who? How do you know him? Yeah. Like, kind of like they just find it weird.
Yeah.
Instantly, you can tell that someone's Australian. There was someone I was sitting there, and I was talking to someone about Perth, and they were from Perth. And I said, "Oh, you know, what did you think of Perth?" And they're like, "Oh, it's quite isolated." And you kind of, go back and forth, and you just talk shit about Perth, but you're like, "Oh, it's kind of like one big small country town," blah blah blah. And had that conversation. Little did I know that the two people sitting next to me were like diehard Perth loving people. They were just like so pissed at me. Sitting there kind of bagging Perth a little bit. I was like, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. You got to warn me. You got to tell me these things.
So many people from Perth there.
It's an easy like 3-hour flight.
Yeah, it's like catching the bus. Just cruise up there. And give us an update on your injuries.
Yep. So everything's pretty much healed up, bar the MCL now. So concussion stuff's all past now. Ribs feeling good. Face is feeling good from the cheekbone surgery or zygoma surgery. Saw the specialist with the MCL, and we start running tomorrow. Exciting. So that's exciting. Yeah,
it's actually all kind of lined up well.
Yeah. So it's 4 weeks and a little bit now this week. So we're going into 4 weeks plus now, and I don't want to put a time frame on it. I think a lot of that will depend on how we go tomorrow and over the next kind of week with running and how we pull up. But it's exciting to take one of those big steps forward now to be able to go, okay, cool. Now we can get into things that emulate a football game, right? Yeah. Like sitting on a bike for an hour doesn't really emulate a football game. Being able to go run on the track with everyone and be able to kind of do straight line running and stuff. I think it's a good positivity thing mentally to be like, all right, cool. We are heading in the direction. We are taking the steps to be able to see the other end of this thing. And I'm excited for it, man. It's going to be good. And, like I said, we're progressing, which is the important thing.
Let's jump into the previews. We'll go Brisbane, Melbourne at the Gabba. I'm saying rip to Melbourne on this one.
R.I.P.
I can't see him winning.
Jeez. That's rough.
Why?
I would love to Melbourne to win, but I think Brisbane's going to definitely take it at home.
Yeah.
Brisbane's going to go 4 straight. Are they back?
I think they're back.
Brisbane's back.
I think they're very much back.
We can officially say that.
They're back.
Brisbane's back, baby.
North Melbourne versus the Western Bulldogs. Do North keep going? Keep competitive? Oh. Have Western Bulldogs turned the corner? How do you see it?
I'm going to go upset alert here.
Really?
I'm going to go North. against Western Bulldogs at Marvel.
Do you reckon North fans want you?
Want what?
Want your support. Talk that much shit about them?
I'll talk a little bit. But the thing is, I've got friends that are North supporters, and they were talking shit to me so much at halftime. I had that many text messages. They're real quiet by the end of the night. You wouldn't believe it. Didn't text me back. Didn't get back to me after the game. Weird how that happens. Yeah, no, I'm on the North train, man. Like the last 2 weeks, they've been very good. If they can just kind of get another quarter of good football in, like they're going to win. They're going to win their game. So
I'm going to have to back in the Western Bulldogs on this one because it is like it's their home game as well.
Yeah.
So both, Marvel house sitters, whatever you call them. What are they?
Home ground.
Home ground.
Home ground Marvel people.
So I'll give it to the Bulldogs. I'd like to think that they've turned a bit of a corner and they can get a bit of a run on. I wouldn't mind seeing their talent just carry them through to the finals, see how they go. I got to go back. I'm going to give Brisbane my cocklock.
Huge.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, you wait till you see what's coming up.
I haven't even looked at the rest of it.
There's some 50-50 games in here. Sydney versus Freo at the SCG. Freo on the road again, as I said.
Cool.
Alice, by Melbourne, Perth, Sydney, Perth, Tassie is their lineup.
A fun little road trip.
Yeah, that's a bit of a run that they've had and they're going to have.
I mean, I'd love to put this as the cock lock, but I feel like that's too obvious. I'm going to go a bit more of a different one.
Too obvious. Fremantle, good team.
At Sydney, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
I just don't think.
Sydney with the dub, for sure.
I think the only team in the run home that will beat Sydney is Brisbane at the Gabba. I reckon if they're on as
Brisbane at the Gabba,
if they're as on as I think they are, I reckon they can get that game done. But for this one, I'm gonna say Sydney. So you're Sydney as well. Gold Coast versus Collingwood in the Mason Cox Cup at People's First Stadium. Who are you tipping? You tipping your boys or your lads?
The boys? I don't know which one's Collingwood, but no, I'm going to tip Collingwood, obviously. It is up there at Gold Coast, so we get a little bit of warm weather after everyone's been on holiday, probably in the Gold Coast. We go back.
Are you going up? You wouldn't go up, would you?
I'm going to try to. I might do the same thing as last week. No, I'm going to try to go up. I highly doubt they'll allow me to go up there, though. I've got to do a bit of rehab back here. But I did go up last year, but I had to pay my own way to go up.
Yeah, right.
So that's how it works. Yeah,
that's
I
wouldn't even go to the game though. I'd just go up for a holiday.
I'm there to support people, even if it's out of my own pocketbook.
Tax. You can get that back on tax.
Yes, I did claim it. But I'm tipping Collingwood on this one.
That's a good call.
Question mark. Actually, here about Gold Coast. We haven't covered this. Their new jumper idea.
I haven't seen it.
No, they haven't. Well, they haven't come out with it, but I think they're committing to essentially saying they're going to revamp it.
Yeah,
which I'm excited for.
I kind of like the
still. I think it. Yeah, but maybe less McDonald's-y than now.
Yeah. Well, their colours are still going to be their colours.
Yeah, but you can change it a little bit to make it nicer. I think.
I reckon we'll draw one up. We'll draw one each, and
that's what they should do. They should do a little competition, and then they should just have people vote on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then in Australians, they'll put something, someone will put a dick on it, and all of a sudden that will win. They're going to have to go, okay, do we commit to this or not? It's guaranteed to happen.
Two big suns for the balls. We'll get there. I'm gonna stick with Collingwood, but it's a very interesting game. Gold Coast at home. Tough team at home. Easy. Adelaide versus GWS. GWS are alternating wins and losses. So this one is coming off the loss, so they should get a win here.
Okay.
Now, I don't know what the hell Adelaide's doing because I keep going, Adelaide will win at home. And it turns out they lose a fair bit at home. So I'm trying to figure out what the hell they're doing. I'm going to just say, I'll go with my boys, the GWS Giants for now.
Yeah.
And hope that they get the job done.
I'm going to go Adelaide. At Adelaide Oval. This is a very 50-50 game, I feel like. It could go either way, but I'll go home team, and just to be different from you because I don't like whenever we decide to the same shit. Unless it's Sydney, I feel like we should have our own opinion. So I'll go Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. Who do we got next?
We got Geelong versus Essendon.
You love Geelong right now. I feel like every time you say Geelong, it just comes with the ugh.
No, it's because I actually hate what they're doing. So I can't.
Wow.
My brain says that I've historically just locked Geelong in most weeks because they've been so good forever. But Geelong versus Essendon at the MCG, I don't know what the hell to expect. I kind of think Essendon can, take a big step for Essendon and get the win here. I don't know that Geelong's that good. And they just
Wow.
lost Tom Hawkins.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't been that good. So, yeah, and Essendon have. So, like, what do I go off? I probably have to go off form and the fact that it is technically at neutral territory for both teams. Neutral territory, all
Geelong
the way over there at the
Geelong
MCG.
wants some cash, so they go to the MCG. We've been through this before. That's just they can be upset about it, but either they choose financials or they choose their home ground.
Yeah, well, think
one
of
or the other.
What you have to do. If you guys have to change it up, you have to go to Marvel. They get penalised by going to one of the best stadiums on the planet Earth. It's not that biggest.
I don't think they want to be going to Marvel. That's an
no
alternative.
one wants to go to Marvel.
Yeah.
No, you can't agree to that. So I'm going to say Essendon in this one.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go Essendon as well.
I thought you were going to go different.
I know I'm going to go different,
different,
but look, we've got something brewing here I'm going to go with here in a second that you're going to go, what are you talking about?
St Kilda v Port at Marvel. I hope it's this game because they both kind of suck. Port are in the 8th. And they really need to get the W. St Kilda have just let the season go. It's done. They're on 20 points for the year after, we kind of expected a bit. Early season, I was backing them in. They kind of burnt me.
Had a lot of hype going in finals last year. And
they burnt me plenty of times because I thought the one thing that they could bring was, pressure and consistency off the back of that. But it just hasn't materialised for the St Kilda Saints, and they're just stuck down the bottom of the ladder. So I think they're going to stay there.
Who do you got in this one, though?
They're going to stay there, but Saints probably win this game.
Wow. Stuff you. We're going cock lock of the week.
What are you doing?
Yeah, boys, the Port Adelaide Power. Ken Hinckley. Get off his back, Adelaide supporters.
What is
Port
this?
Adelaide supporters get stuffed. Ken Hinckley, we're going back for 10 years. Signing for 10 years. He's going to dominate this. Port Adelaide. I got him winning by 60. Oh, screw it. Port Adelaide, baby. They're my team.
Do you know
Besides
what
the Gold Coast songs. Yeah. Now, Port Adelaide. They're going to get the dub at Marvel.
So they lose by 70 at home and win by
I don't care.
70 away.
I don't care. They're going to rally around their superstar. That is Ken Hinckley. Oh, gosh. I don't even know if Butters is playing this week, but put him down for 5 goals.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, he did hurt his shoulder, so we'll wait and see on that one. But, okay, we'll have fun with that one. We'll clip that up when Port wins.
Yep.
Richmond v Carlton. I think this one's probably a pretty easy one. Lynch out with another suspected hamstring injury. So I'm going Carlton, who are on an absolute tear at the moment.
Yeah, we're going to go Carlton on this one at the MCG. It's tough to look past them. I will say props to Richmond, though. Dusty's 300. They did show up for a little bit of that. And then it went real south real quick.
Yeah, you know what wasn't great was his post-game interview.
Dusty's?
Yeah.
Give us the rundown.
Well, he just says he got asked like 5 different questions from Jack Riewoldt, and he just said the same answer 5 times.
Yeah, he did it Dusty.
Really overwhelmed at the moment, and I'd like to thank everyone coming out. And it's like every single answer.
Yeah.
Come on.
What'd you expect? Did you expect him all of a sudden to give a deep dive on his life on his 300th game?
Yeah.
No, he's not going to do it.
He sold out a stadium of like 90-something
You know what he's doing? He's protecting all that. And then whenever he retires, he's going to actually probably open up and sell, oh my gosh, that many copies of book that he writes.
He'd get that ghost written, wouldn't he?
Yeah, of course. But he's going to at least have all the information that people don't know about him because he never opens up.
Yeah. No, that's good.
That's smart marketing, Brayden.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know.
smart marketing.
Yeah. But people loved it anyway. He's got to know that. They frothed it. So many commentators were like, oh my God, we'll talk about that forever. Will we?
Dusty's weak. Dusty's he's the greatest big-time player that's ever played.
Undeniable.
Undeniable.
I'm not saying
100%.
that. He's not the greatest big interviewer of all time. I'll tell you that much. Now, let's wrap it up, mate.
Jeez,
We've got places to be.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening through this one, and I appreciate you understanding. It's been a bit of an on-off month with injuries and travel and everything else, but we're back on regular programming. So I just want to say a massive thank you for continuing to be part of this community. Follow us on all the socials. We got Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everything. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify, wherever you listen on this this podcast on, whether it be Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. Make sure you hit the bell to make sure that you know whenever a new episode is out. But a massive, massive thank you for being part of this community and showing love and support. It is all very, very important to us, and we appreciate it. So without further ado, though, that is it for today, and have an incredible week ahead.
Yeah.